My son wrote this for me when he was probably 5 or 6. Oh, why don't you say that again, punk?
I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't say anything.
You called him a homo.
No, I did not.
Oh.
Say it again.
What do you want?
Homo?
You called me a homo.
No, I didn't.
All right, so this is going to be basically the install of the Unichip. This is video 1. And what I'm going to do is just kind of go through the basics of the installation first. I want to keep these segments down to about 20 minutes a piece. So yeah, some of them are going to be kind of left open-ended because it'll be right in the middle of doing something, but I figured that by doing it like that, I'm going to keep it kind of easy to follow. If you need to find a certain point in the install, you don't have to hunt through a 45-minute long video to find it. And so after this initial video, they'll be kept to 20 minutes, and I'm going to try to keep them short. What I want to do is kind of go through real quick. What I'm excited about for this. Of course, for a long time, you know, any car that you wanted to take beyond what the stock computer's abilities was you had to install aftermarket engine management for the most part, or you had to insert some type of PROM. You know, Honda guys are familiar with that. And there's been stuff out there for a while, but back in 95, I installed aftermarket to complete engine management from a company called Electromotive. It was called the Tech 2, and full standalone. I did keep the stock computer so that AC, turn signals, cruise, all that stuff that I wanted to hold on to would still be there. Unfortunately, back in 95, you know, here in Texas at least, and I know it varies from state to state, but in order to pass a state inspection, you couldn't have a check engine light on. And the way the full standalones work is you have to totally sever the signals from the stock engine management, the stock computer, and tie it into the engine management for control. So at that point, the computer on the car doesn't get any signals on every sensor that is used for engine management is not getting a signal to PCM. So bling, check engine light. So at that time, there was the old Honda trick, and still today, I guess, where people would put on the to keep the check engine light for the map sensor, they put on the fish tank check valves. There are better valves to put on, stronger valves. There's ways around it. I'm proof positive, and I know there's some other people out there that have done turbo kits on Saturns that did the same thing. But anything over 1 bar or 14.5 psi atmospheric, anything above what your stock PCM would see, sometimes it would freak out the stock PCM. So they put these check valves in there to kind of hide that boost signal. And of course, the check valve would then allow vacuum to be registered, or the atmospheric 14.7 below any boost, you know, basically zero. And also too, I might as well say there's KPA, there's pressure, there's all kinds of different readings for this kind of stuff. I like to try to hover around one thing. There's bar, there's kilopascals, there's all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to try to hover around one variable, I guess you can say, or whatnot, to keep it simple. But when you do that, when you install a standalone, a couple things. One, you do have the check engine light. So if you're going to maintain any kind of streetability and pass state inspection, then you can't have the check engine light on. Or if you know someone, you kind of get around it that way. But so I've always wanted to, have a engine management on the car, and then not have the check engine light. So that's important to me. I'm not a person that does this kind of stuff and loves polluting the atmosphere. I realize right now there's a bunch of green suckasses out there. That in our segment, what we do is on such a small scale. But right now, with the RPM Act needing to be championed, they're just really going after a segment that I believe is so minimal. When you see jets in the air leaving behind trails of gas or smoke, diesels, and I know a lot of people say, oh, well, because diesel, it falls right to the ground. And still, trains, all this stuff. There's a lot of other gross offenders than the race industry to go after, but we're easy. Okay, so hopefully the RPM Act does a lot to kind of push back against that stuff. It's ridiculous what's happening. You might want to read up on it, because if you have any love for modifying your car, it doesn't matter if it's a cold air intake or what, they're going to shut you down. So if you're not political, you better get political. Stop voting for these green knuckleheads, because they're just not focused on what really they need to go after. They're going after the small guys. They're going after people that, like I said, very small segment. Out of 50 people, how many people have any kind of performance things on their cars? Practically no one. Okay? So it's not a big segment to go after, but they are. And I'd encourage you to go to PFI Motorsports. They've hit them with some fines and stuff like that. SEMA's kind of lit up about it. It's called the RPM Act. And you need to go ahead and let your representatives, I know you feel like it's a waste of time, but you need to let them know, send them an email, take some time out, get off of Facebook, get off of Twitter, get off of TikTok, do something real with your time on the computer or your phone, and email these knuckleheads and tell them, vote for the RPM Act. And that's going to help protect what we do. All right, so off that soapbox. So I'm excited about the Unichip, because conversely, when you put the Unichip on, you should not see check engine lights. Because what happens is, with the Unichip, yes, you do sever connections, you do interrupt that signal, but the computer doesn't know that. It's still seeing the signal. It's still seeing a signal from the sensors. The aftermarket engine management, you cut the signal, you feed it into the aftermarket brain takes it and does what it needs to do, and that's where you get your changes from. Here, you're basically severing the connection, in some cases, not all, but you're severing it. You're going into the Unichip, and then the Unichip's going out to your stock PCM. So the Unichip is basically lying to the stock PCM and telling it other than what's really happening with the engine environment, what's going on with the sensors and all that stuff. And so it's still seeing the signal. It's going to make changes off that signal. So it should not have a check engine light on, unless you've got too big of injectors, you're heavy startup, heavy idle. You're going to have that. But with the Unichip, you should be able to tune that out. We'll get into that. So, and with the Unichip, for whatever reason, if you were to need to, there is a bypass plug that you could pull out and put that in there, and it returns it to stock. Now, granted, if you have fat injectors in there, you're going to have to go back to stock injectors. And then, like, you take out the Unichip and you put in this bypass plug, and all of a sudden, you're back to stock. Not true if you've had to have put in larger injectors to meet your performance needs. Naturally, you're going to need to go back with your smaller injectors. So it's kind of misleading to say you just do this simple little swap and you're back to stock, but close to it. It's closer to it than if you had a full standalone. You'd have to go back and repair all that wiring, make everything connect. Still have to pull out your larger injectors and whatever else you got going on. So when you have a full standalone versus this, unless you make changes, let's say unless you make changes to the fuel and timing above, let's say in my case where we're going to be doing boost, then everything else below that's going to be stock. And so you don't have to tune those areas. Matter of fact, because it's a closed loop feedback at some point after you started the car and it warmed up, whatever changes you make, it's going to try to return them back to where it wants to be. So at idle part throttle, tuning's going to be not what you think it is. However, there's ways around that, and we're going to get into that. The cost of it, I mean, I've mentioned before on the What's in the Box video, which you can watch, very cheap comparative to standalone systems. It's very easy to install. Now, I say that at the same time saying this. Just like anything, if you drive a Saturn, you realize from a parts availability standpoint, you realize from a fan base, you're kind of on your own, and you know that. And that's part of the... I was driving on the other day on the road, and I said, you know what, I'm going to just make note of how many Saturn S-Series I see. You still see some Ions and some Views and stuff like that, but you really don't see that many S-Series, at least in my area. You might, I don't know. So I'm the kind of guy, I kind of like having something someone else doesn't have, but with that comes challenges of you get rear-ended, heaven help you, trying to find a bumper and a trunk and all that stuff for your S-Series Saturn. There is eBay, and maybe there's some other places. I know at one time in Florida, I think there was a company called M&S Recycling, and they literally, all they really had in inventory was Mitsubishis and Saturns. And when Saturn went under, apparently they basically metal salvaged everything they had, crushed all the Saturns. And so that was not good, because in one of my prior videos, I showed that I'm getting rid of my 95, something I didn't really want to do, but I realized for my 97, it's bad. For my 95, it'll be even worse. So we do have a unique car, and it offers unique challenges, and it always has. When Saturn Motorsports, XRC, SPS, and all them guys were around, not so bad for performance stuff. There was some hope. There were some other offshoots like MOS Pulleys, different companies that kind of stepped up and came to be, kind of got on board. But of course, Saturn Motorsports went out, Saturn fell under, and there you are, here we are. So it's a unique car. The putting the Unichip on this is going to give me the tunability I need to go ahead and put larger injectors in it. I've got 24-pound injectors on it right now. I know that there's another gentleman on here that is successfully doing just a bare bones. It's a fuel pressure regulator, and he says 550 cc injectors. I've had problems with startup and idle. Not that it wouldn't idle, but it's a hellacious amount of fuel to put in on a stock PCM with stock PCM pulse width. Just, you can imagine, if you know anything about cars, the fuel that you're getting during startup will turn your 5-weight-30 oil into like a 0.10 or 0.20. I mean, it's going to really thin it out. And so you're going to run into constant oil changes with too large of an injector, unless you know something, and maybe this gentleman does know, I don't know. It drives fine. He shows it idling. He shows it, I don't know. I don't think it shows startup, but he shows it idling. Looks like after it's warmed up, and he goes and rips on it a little bit, and looks like it's effective for him. And for what I understand, he is running just the rising rate fuel pressure regulator and some larger injectors. I don't know about fuel pump. I don't know if I read that he upped it or not. But anyway, it looks successful, and I'm happy for him. But I want the tunability. I want to be able to go in and mess with the timing, mess with the fuel. The Unichip's going to give me that ability. Two-step, or basically launch control. You have that availability. You have the ability to remove the speed limiter, the rev limiter. You have the ability to move it to wherever you want. If you still want a speed limiter, you can put it in there. There's different things you can do. There's a ton of things it can do, actually. What I've done is I've focused in the manual on things that are just going to pertain to me. In other words, I skipped the section about VTEC. I skipped, it can control all that. But I mean, it is a thorough piggyback, quote unquote. I look at it as an engine management system just without all the extra hassle. So I've heard, now here's the thing that I kind of don't like about it is I think they originated out of either South Africa or New Zealand, one of the two. And if you do searches on the internet, there's a few companies. I know Unichip Europe, there is Unichip US, Unichip Europe. They're big in Australia and New Zealand. They're big in Indonesia. I mean, you can pull up video after video. There's actually one company, I think it's Auto Labs or something like that. This Asian guy, he kind of, if you watch his videos, he bounces back between his native language and English. Never really shows you anything other than just vague things. He shows you installing it, but he just shows the guy working on it. And I mean, it's not helpful at all. And I've actually reached out to him for guidance and got nothing. The gentleman that basically kind of started the rear mount turbo kind of craze that's now gone, that gentleman actually has some understanding of Unichip. And so he's offered to help if it comes to it that I need his help to install it. The problem with the Saturn is Unichip's never done anything with the Saturn. One of the steps that you take when you first get the Unichip and you're installing it is you go to the website or you go to your software and you find Saturn and you open it up and you download the wiring schematic. And literally, it shows you every wire, every color, whether to completely splice into it or to just tie into it. They do it for tons of other cars that you've never even heard of, cars that are over in Indonesia and New Zealand and all these things. And granted, the Saturn was around for what, since 91 on up to what, 2000 and I don't know. But I mean, it was around for a while, and these people have been around for a while. So I guess they just didn't have enough cars over there in those areas of the country to warrant doing anything with. I don't know. But even trying to reach out to these guys. See, what I bought was a do-it-yourself kit. Okay, and with that kit, unless you pay Unichip, that's another thing I don't like about them. If they want their product to get out there, they don't offer you much in terms of after the sale help. They cut you off pretty quick. That kind of help comes at the tune of you got to buy into it. They want you to be a tuner, preferably with a dyno, and then you get all this extra, guidance and help. But he was willing to entertain, so some helping me a little bit. And so when I sent him, he wanted a picture of the connectors for the Saturn PCM and things like that, and I sent it to him and never heard word back from him. So I get it. Investing in the Saturn right now is a no-win situation. He has to go where the money goes. If there was a bunch of people wanting this, be a different matter, obviously. So I get that. But in the end, I chose it because even with that, as long as you have an understanding of what cars do what and what systems do what, and you kind of understand what happens when boost comes on and what you need to do with fuel and timing at that point, we can work our ways through this. We can. And so when I'm done, I'm going to do a wiring schematic. It'll be specific to the 97 SC2 dual overhead cam. So if you have SC1 single or something like that, you're just going to check everything, because I'm not going to spend the time to go look at the wiring schematics and see if the color wires changed or what. I mean, you're just going to have to kind of get into it. But hopefully these video series will kind of give you that starting guidance that you need to kind of get you on board with it. I'm shocked though, because until I kind of stumbled on it, I'd never heard of Unichip. And one of my, when I worked at Toyota for 7 months, the service manager there said he had heard of it. And apparently Toyota does put, some Toyotas do, they have a relationship with Unichip and they will put on some aftermarket stuff. So I'm not going to say just because I haven't heard of it, it never has existed or isn't worth anything. I'm just saying I've never heard of it. But I do like the prospect, and I know that I can get this done. And I'm going to try to help you guys if y'all want to get it done, and you can use this for guidance stuff. I'm opening these videos up for questions, whereas other ones I don't, because the negative comments and things like that, I ain't got time for all that. There's people out there that have an agenda, and you know they're going to jump on and say stuff. I'm just going to block them or delete it. I don't know, whatever. If you got a viable question, ask it. I do my best to answer them, but try to watch the video. I don't like sitting here answering questions that I've already answered in the video, and I may not. Like I said, I'm going to do a schematic once it's done. I'll share that readily. I'm not trying to hold on to anything or you know, keep you from getting into anything. You can literally install this Unichip if you have a stock engine. You can literally install it, make all your cuts, make all your connections, fire up the Unichip, and the car will run just like it has for you before, okay? Because until you make changes on it, it's not going to do anything, okay? You're going in the Unichip with the same sensor data that the computer would be looking for, and it's coming out of the Unichip with the same sensor data the computer was looking for. So it's not hurting anything. It's only when you go in and you make changes that the computer, that you'll actually be doing anything with the car. Like I said, I've basically kind of been studying on the chapters that pertain to me specifically in the car and what I want to do. Obviously, there's turbo. My goal, if the head gasket can take it, if it can't, I'll lose the head gasket and I'll just go ahead and farm out the custom metal head gasket. I thought I saw somewhere someone was trying to get something going on like a group buy, but those are so fickle. People kind of say they're going to pay for it and they don't, and so I just go my own route. But whatever I get on that, I'll share with you. If one company is going to offer a metal head gasket, I'll just let you know. I'll let you know the part number and let you know that they're offering it, and you can take it from there. But I'm hoping to run 20 pounds. And the 20 pounds, it's kind of like an even number. I get it. I could run 17, 15 and a half, whatever. Just wherever the engine kind of tops out at, where I believe. But I figure at that boost level, even though the spool comes on later now, like you've seen, I really don't think there's, you know, as far as front engine or front wheel drive, you know, you can only, I know these people, it's a sickness. You know, they get 200, they want 300, then they get 400, and then they want 500, and it's just never ending. Okay, at some point you go beyond the fun factor, the drivability factor. You add so much to it that it's riding right on a hair's edge of just blowing up. And so I think at that PSI, as long as the head gasket holds in, man, that's all I need for a street car. I mean, let's see. I'm going to start off with the basics of spark and fuel. Basically go ahead and show you where to hook up on those. As you know, the Saturn doesn't have a camshaft position sensor. It has a crankshaft position sensor. And if you're reading through this manual, it tells you unless there is some sensor on there that you can mess with, like a distributor or some kind of manually adjustable, then you're going to run timing off the crank sensor. However, in other areas, it talks about if you're running an aftermarket turbo system, you're going to want to pull or look up your load on your map sensor. And you can't do it on your factory map sensor. You have to use one of their turbo modules that has a 1 bar or 2 bar map sensor on there. Okay, so we'll get into all that. But then I get into the speed limiters. Not many people know that, and this is just for someone who is curious, if you put an automatic PCM in your manually transmissioned Saturn, your rev limit and your speed limits automatically go away. Your check engine light will be on because now that automatic PCM is not getting sensor feedback from some of the sensors that are part of the automatic transmission. But if the check engine light's not a problem for you and you don't want those rev limiters and speed limiters, you can do that. Just swap out the same year auto PCM for your manual PCM. Bob's your uncle. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to do the rev limiter and speed limiter removal, which looks fairly easy to do. There is 2 steps, so you'll be able to and you build boost at the line. That's good. You can do nitrous. Pretty cool how they do nitrous. There's boost control. You can do boost control with it. So I'm definitely going to be doing that. I'm going to be doing boost by speed. So I'll get into all that. And then also too, I think where a lot of these videos kind of fall short is it gets you to the point where maybe they get you the install, but anyone can do that. It's after the fact, it's tuning it that tends to be the real challenge for people. And so I'm going to have my little GoPro on my little chest thing or maybe on my head, and I'm going to be showing you from the start and showing you why I'm making the changes. I'm going to show you the grid area where I'm making the changes and why I'm making the changes, so you can kind of understand why you need to do these things and at what point and all that. So I'm going to try to be as thorough as I can, but like I said, I'm going to try to keep the videos down to 20 minutes. So, you know, the average attention span of everybody today is much, much less than it was before. So I talked about opening up the comment section again. Watch the video. It's 20 minutes. The answer may be in there. One thing that's going to get me kind of perturbed, I guess, is where I know the question that you're answering was answered in the video. That means you didn't watch the video. You just want to jump in real quick once your question answered and then on your way. I'm probably not going to deal with that. So, however, I know that during the course of seemingly answering a question in a video, some portion of it isn't clear. And so it might be something like, hey, I know you said that you tap in, do you actually cut the wire or do you, that kind of thing. You just need a little bit of clarification to give you that warm and fuzzy feeling. I get that. I'll do that. Let's see here. Insults, trolls, stuff like that. I'm not going to deal with it. Talked about 20 pounds. Let's see here. We're going to keep the stock PCM on it because we still will want whatever control it offers us in terms of AC, calling on the fan, cruise control if you have it, that kind of thing. And again, like I mentioned, if you install this thing right, then you're not going to have a check engine light on after that. I will say one of the biggest benefits that I've seen with this is, it was an engineer that made this, right? And most engineers, and I've dealt with a bunch of them when I worked near the Johnson Space Center at an automotive place, same guy who could put a rover on Mars, okay, would come in and he didn't have the foggiest idea what a throttle body on a car was. And when I say that, I ain't kidding. So it blows my mind that, and it's my fault. I get it. I mean, I'm assuming that this engineer who can do this kind of work is like a beast when it comes to understanding the mechanicals on a car. That's wrong of me to think that, but I only say that to say this. Clearly an engineer came up with this thing, but the manual that he wrote for it, oh my gosh. I mean, it is like he's teaching a 2-year-old. I mean, he is able to take from an engineer's mind and put it in such layman terms that if you can't understand this, you don't need to be doing this kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that from the standpoint of like I have this higher understanding of vehicle operation and I don't understand what it's like for a newbie to come in. Dude, it's written for a newbie. I mean, it's so simple. So I was shocked that it was like that. And a matter of fact, I've never understood oscilloscopes and how to set all the parameters in there. Yeah, he shows you how to do that. And if you can't do it after that, you're suffering up here. So, but again, in my case, you're not really going to have to deal with that. I'm going to show you which wires to get into. The oscilloscope is there to help get a clean signal with very little noise or no noise. Get the right signal, understand if it's digital or analog, if it's inductive, all that stuff. I'll explain all that later, but I'm just going to show you which wires to tap into so you don't have to figure it out. So why not Mega Squirt? Okay. So at one point I was interested in Mega Squirt all the way up to and including build your own, and then you had your basically plug and play. And I watched all the back and forth where people, again, were able to install it, but they weren't able to tune it. So then at that point, they're looking for help. So what happens? Johnny B in California lets Tommy C in New York have his file that he used to program his car. Well, every engine's different. The volumetric efficiency is different. It can be off 1-2 degrees, off a little bit of fuel. You're gonna have problems. And I watched time and time again where people, and this wasn't just on the Saturn forums, I actually looked up for Fords and Chevrolets when people would use it on there, and they were really struggling with this. And again, I'm not faulting Megasquirt. There's some smart people doing that, I'm sure. And they probably intend that whoever's installing these things on their cars to have a really good understanding of it. But in the end, it's like giving a revolver, passing it around in a room of 10-year-olds. And they're all pulling triggers, opening up stuff, pointing stuff, looking at down the barrel. They don't really get what they're doing. And that's given the Megasquirt a bad name in my mind. So I don't get paid from Unichip. I'm not going to get paid from Unichip. I find joy and celebration in helping people, in particular with performance stuff on cars, and being successful. I'm sure the last thing you want to do is build your engine, go to the links and the cost of doing that, only to install a system on the car that blows it up the first few drives. If I can help stave off some of that, and by providing all this, being basically the doormat, I'll do that. And I feel good about it that I've helped people. The Megasquirt, the Saturn community in particular with it, a lot of people got on board with it. A lot of people weren't happy with it. A lot of people were disenfranchised with it, and they get rid of their car, and it's just I didn't see a lot of good results. Are there some people that have persevered and had good results with it? Sure, but they've really immersed themselves in it and they fully understand the system, but that's not the general case. That's kind of unique. So, and I've seen the schematics. I've seen people try to be helpful and they've showed you what wires to hook into and all this good stuff, but it's the tuning. It's the tuning, and the Megasquirt is a lot like, Fast, Electromotive, Motec. You have to do startup enrichments. You have to do acceleration enrichments, deceleration enrichments. I mean, you have to program the whole dang map on the car. You got to watch temperature-based stuff, both for startup and for hard driving. It's a lot. It's a lot for a person that really doesn't understand it. You probably just had enough gumption or know-how to throw the parts on the car. And now here it is, you're trying to figure out how to get the thing started up and running. And that's where a lot of guys are relying on someone to send them a file that they had compiled on their car and it worked on theirs. And it just wasn't working right for them. They didn't know how to go in and take almost and make it right on. Okay, so they didn't know to go in and take this guy's tune and see where it was lacking with timing or fuel, make the necessary changes. They just didn't understand it. So what I'm going to do, and I'm not saying anything that I'm going to do is going to be different from that per se, but I'm going to be showing video-wise of, let's say at 3,200 RPM at 10 PSI, why I'm going in right here and I'm going to add fuel, and then I'm going to interpolate between this cell and this cell. Why am I doing that? So, and I'm going to show you why, and we'll see the results, and then we'll make some more changes. Ultimately, it is the best to get on a dyno and do that, but you can get pretty close on a street tune type system. But anyway, we're not going to go there yet. I'll show you. But what I mean is on the Megasquirt and things like that, and of course your check engine light's on as well with that system. So me personally, I didn't go down the road of Mega Squirt just from what I saw. I didn't feel it was a reliable system. So, and again, if you're pro Mega Squirt, don't take this personally. I'm not lambasting them. I'm not running them down. I'm just saying what I've seen, and my own personal decision not to use them was based on what I saw and what everybody was doing. And I personally don't want to sit there and tune the thing from startup to whatever. I want to throw this system on there, be able to start the car, because right now it's starting fine, and take it and do what I need to do to offset the performance modifications that I'm be doing, adding more boost and need larger injectors and mess with the timing. And in the end, whether or not it was able to do boost control or any of that other stuff, timing and fuel, you need control of that. So, all right. So, having said that, one of the things that I'd hoped for, and it was probably more of a reality if Saturn stuck around and was still there, was some of these brainiacs that we see on these forums. There was a few times where it looked like they were going after it, looked like they were getting close. I don't know why they stopped. Maybe they realized that the market just wasn't there for them to pursue it. But I could have swore there was a few people that had gotten close to offering some type of ability to program the stock PCM on the Saturn. I know there was a few, the inner city youth, I think it was a 97, 98, something like that, coupe. They were campaigning that for the ICY, but I think they were running a Motec, full standalone. But at some point there was one something of the America or some channel. It was a yellow, like a 2001 coupe, I think, maybe. They actually had the stock PCM. Someone got into that and was able to figure something out on that, from what I understand. Okay, it's neither here nor there now, but it just told me that there were people either close to or already there in being able to tap into the Saturn's PCM and make some kind of programmable system where you plug it into a software system and you're able to go in there and I don't know. But I'm shocked that a lot of these brains that were part of the Saturn community wasn't able to come up with something like that. So, but it is what it is. So, but at any rate, I don't know of anybody that's put this on a Saturn before. I know, like in particular for the Saturn's timing control, yes, the crank sensor tells the computer where top dead center's at. That's all it does. It tells it where top dead center's at, but it cannot tell the computer which cylinder is on the compression top dead, the firing compression. Is it on 1, 2, 3, 4? That is where the ignition control, there's a wire or basically like a sensing system on the car that senses that and tells the computer which cylinder is on compression, so it knows to fire the spark. I get into all that. I'm going to show you how the Unichip incorporates that system, how to get around it. And so, yeah. So that's basically it. Like I said, in the end, I'm going to do the best I can to help those that want to do this afterwards. I'll send you the schematic, or I'll put it up on one of my videos. You can pause it and look. There's only going to be a few connections, so it's not real intensive install. Like I said, there's going to be some places where you have to basically cut the wire, take from the sensor, go into the Unichip, and on the other side, the other part of the wire, put that into the Unichip, and that's the output that goes to your PCM. And the PCM just takes what it's being told and makes changes based on what it's being told, irregardless of what the real world is. It's for all it knows, that is the real world. So it's going to make changes based off that. So I'm excited for it. It's cheap, like I said, to get involved with it if you wanted to, especially if after this I've got a wiring schematic that you can just download and just how to put it in. And at that point, I'm also going to submit to Dohc, which is I guess the company or parent company, Unichip, to put that in their file system. Because part of at the first start of the tune, it asks you to go look up the wiring schematic, then it asks you to download that file, but we don't have that. So we're going to be a few steps down the road. Okay. So any issues I run into, I've got a little bit of help from Mr. Squires, the guy that basically started the rear mount turbo kind of craze that happened there for a little bit. He's offered his help. I've got another guy that worked at NASA. He's an engineer. He's now our IT guy at the place I work at. He's offered his help in case I need to understand things and such. But so I got some help too, and but I'm looking forward to doing it. Looking forward to getting it done. I don't know how quickly it's going to go. Right now, I'm suffering from a little bit of sciatica problems that I've been actually suffering from for the better part of a year. I didn't have insurance because I lost my job due to COVID. Finally got insurance, lost it again because my wife left her job, got it again, actually got on the health exchange for a little bit. Now I'm back on the health exchange. So there's been some up and downs that I haven't really been able to go to the doctor, but in the end I decided to go see a chiropractor, and much to my surprise, this guy wasn't a kook, and he was able to, if I had to percentage it with 100% being jacked, I'd say right now I'm about 40%. So he has relieved it some, and I've only been seeing him for about a week and a half. So 2 weeks, every couple of days, I've been going in for quote unquote adjustments or whatever. But I think I actually have two issues. One is in my hip, and then the other is in my sciatica. So working on it, but that does, as some of you that might know ever having suffered from it, there's days where you can barely walk, and there's moments where it feels like nothing's wrong. It's weird. So I've had that attacking me, but I get through it, and then just persevere. But I look forward to sharing it with you. Stay tuned. We're going to get through this. The next video will be where I get into, like I said, we're going to focus on fuel and timing first, and then we're going to go after the rest of that stuff. Speed limiters, rev limiters, two-step, nitrous, boost control. We're going to get into all that, okay? But the interesting thing is, even now, although I would say the Unichip Q Plus that I have was new, now that's been basically replaced by a different system. However, they end up being a lot the same, and so there's not a challenge with that. It's basically just renaming it to freshen the product up. It even looks different, okay? So, but anyway, look forward to doing it, and I'll talk to you soon.